Hello everyone. Every Saturday, my housemates and I come together and give presentations to each other. This could be about anything you want. This helps us greatly to stay in contact and have fun activities to do during the Corona lockdown. Now that the Corona lockdown is almost over, I decided to put some of my videos and my presentations online so that it might inform, inspire, or just be fun to watch. Today I'm going to talk to you about Watch Dogs Legion. Watch Dogs Legion is a third-person open-world action-adventure video game developed by Ubisoft Toronto in Canada, and it is the third installment of the Watch Dogs franchise. It is released on the 29th of October 2020 and can be played on a large variety of platforms. In this presentation, I won't go over the multiplayer aspect because when I played it, it was just released and back then there was no multiplayer yet. So, what is this franchise about? The Watch Dogs franchise is a series about hacking in an open world environment and using it to gain the upper hand during conflicts and to progress with the story. The series has several core mechanics. The first one is driving, as a main way for traversal, with some parkour traversal as well, like in Assassin's Creed, but more limited as you have to hack objects and move them in the right position to climb rather than just going straight up a building. The second core mechanic is hacking. This can be either done as a single action, such as blowing up a gas pipe or moving a car forward, or hacking a camera or a drone, but it can also be a traversal puzzle where you have to move a drone from one place to another while traversing a level, or like a path puzzle where you have to make a path align in order to hack a certain hardware. The player has a lot of hacking options and can also learn information about the people in the world and steal money from them. This is all possible because within the lore, everything is connected to the same system. The third core mechanic is shooting. The main character has a large variety of weapons that either immobilize enemies or kills enemies. This includes, but is not limited to, a stun gun, an assault rifle, and a handgun. The fourth and last core mechanic is stealth. Stealth is optional, meaning that the player can do missions quietly, but can also just rush in, but it has a bigger chance of the player dying. Using stealth and using hacking to influence your environment, such as distracting enemies or killing them, often gives a bigger advantage. The game offers three ways of approach: hacking, shooting, or stealth. The first Watch Dogs was set in Chicago and was released in 2013. The second Watch Dogs was set in San Francisco and released in 2016, and the third Watch Dogs was set in London and released in 2020. With the third one was actually developed by Ubisoft Toronto, while the other two were developed by Ubisoft Montreal. The game series is made entirely in a Disrupt engine because it is very good for simulation of the environment and its content. So that means how the environment can be affected. And it also is very good for the seamless connectivity of the online experience for multiplayer. So now let's talk about Watch Dogs 3. The third Watch Dogs changed things up quite a bit. Starting with the setting, they decided to hold it in London. Thus everyone in the game also has a British accent. But the biggest change they made is actually the character you control. Unlike the first two games where you control a single character, in the third game you can play as anyone, which is also their main selling point. The game is about people. You can recruit anyone you see in the game and unlock them as a playable character. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses, abilities, and weapons. You can play as a hooligan and call other hooligans to help you in the fight. You can play as a construction worker and call in a cargo drone on which you can fly. You can even play as an old lady who walks very slow but is a spy and has her spy car which can turn invisible and shoot rockets. There are many, many options. You can even recruit police officers or gang members who have special access to areas that you can then enter without raising suspicion, just like in the Hitman series. In total, you can recruit up to 45 people. However, when you attack someone, it becomes more unlikely that you can convince the person to join your group. And for everyone you want to have join your group, you also have to complete a mission first. So now let's look at the NPC system. NPC stands of course for non-player character. When being close to a player character, or when being close to a character, the NPC is created. And at first it has only a gender and an initial spawn location. The location decides the ethnicity of the NPC, the clothing, and the occupation. The ethnicity and gender then decide the name and the voice of the character. There are a total of 20 different voices and voice lines, and the game has their own AI modifier, which makes it feel like there are even more. The job location, salary, and ability is then decided by the occupation. Salary then defines the apartment type, and the apartment location is decided by the apartment type and the initial location. Their opinion about towards DedSec and thus towards you is based on their interaction with you and the interaction with their associates with you. For example, if you hurt or kill an associate of them, they will dislike you more. They will also, if they dislike you too much, it may become impossible for them for you to recruit them. The NPC's ability comes from their occupational group. There are only four things that are currently completely random, which is the gender, their associates, their age, and the personality. The personality decides how they react. Some things are partially randomly generated. For example, their salary can be either low, medium, or high, and when that is while that is decided within low, there is a random number picked within that range. The same thing goes for age. You have young, adult, middle age, and old. Same thing for clothing and associates, which can be family, positive associate, transactional, or rivalry. And then positive being a friend or cousin or colleague or classmate, and transactional being something like a customer or client. All of the data points named before combined decide a character's schedule. This can be influenced by the player as well. If a character is supposed to meet another character, which you have killed, they'll instead mourn that person in during that time. When an NPC is spawned, they do not have a schedule yet, or associates or a salary. This is only created once you engage with them. A profile, you profile them, you can recruit them, add them as a potential recruit, or injure them. This helps a lot with saving memory. The system is called the census program, and this decides how NPCs are created. Currently, the system is restricted to having only a maximum of 4 links per item for performance reasons. There's one other thing that, of course, makes this game very special, which is the permadeath. Your character can be arrested, kidnapped, or injured and become unavailable for a certain amount of time. However, it can also be killed, meaning that the character will never be available to play again. Injuries and jail time can be shortened if you, for example, have a lawyer or a medic on your team, but if the character dies, he is dead forever. This also means that if all the characters in your group are dead, the game is literally game over and you have to play the entire game from the start again. So let's look at how good the game actually is. Most reviews of the game give it an 8 out of 10. This includes IGN, PC Gamer, GameSpot, and many others. On Metacritic, the user reviews is however a 5.6. My personal score is a 6.5. I played the game and finished it after about 35 hours on a PS4 a week after launch. So how did I and many others come to this conclusion? Well, the strength of the game definitely comes from the uniqueness of the permadeath in this action adventure genre and the fact that you can play as anyone. But first, let's talk about the characters. Because the players care about who they recruit with the play as anyone. However, it also has a negative side effect because you want to find good recruits and those are not easy to find, and therefore you will often end up with a construction worker since they are very versatile, since they can fly with a cargo drone that they can call, and that is a very good way of traversal. It also creates the characters also create issues with the story as an NPC talks to you as if they know you while you play with a new character that you just recruited. And the way the story is set up, it also doesn't allow for any character development with this system. When you have to recruit someone, they can also dislike that sec, and You have to look for clues in order to convince them. And although this is a nice feature, there's no real motivation to do so because you can just find someone who is similar to that character who does not hate that sack. However, because you have to do recruitment missions for every one you recruit, it becomes quite also repetitive, and you are actually quite discouraged to keep recruiting infinitely as it keeps being the same missions over and over in a different jacket. And sometimes you risk more recruiting someone than their actual benefiting your team. Because while you're doing a mission of recruiting, your character can of course still die. What is also not optimally used is that even though you have the place anyone feature, it is not really used in a moment to moment gameplay. The story also does not work well with the NPCs, since you can fully customize your character and your clothing, and therefore can be almost completely naked, but everyone you interact with still interacts the same. There is also no benefit to having someone on your team with a negative trait, such as being slow or having a spending habit, because there is no trade-off. You can just find someone with the exact same skills but not have a negative trait. It's also a bit unrealistic and unbelievable that every person in Loden knows how to hack. If there was a trade-off, it would have been way more interesting. Since you can play as everyone, you also notice it quite quickly when the same voice actor is used for different characters, which breaks a bit of the immersion. Interaction for recruitment can also be a feel a bit off because they instantly know you are DedSec. Although it is of course logic since you need to move on. It is fun though that like a lot of characters have their own personality types and different responses in the same scenario. But what is most memorable and good about the characters are their melee animations. When someone is a fighter or a hacker, they will fight differently. So some persons will fight very trained or refined, while others will fight with more low mobility. And this also looks really good. The game is divided in total in five subsections, each with their own end boss. Unfortunately, in my opinion, there's only one of them that's actually good. And this is the one where you can also get also to make a choice about what happens at the end of the boss fight. And even though it's not a meaningful choice that has impact later on the story, it still feels really good. The characters of that story and of that part do not feel generic, which happens in the rest of the story, and is quite immersive as slowly you discover and unravel the plot. The intro of the game, however, does not set the world properly to establish the world. So why does this game now in total not deserve a higher grade? Well, since the game has permanent death, it also forces you to play in a certain way. It forces you to play stealthy. And while this can be good, it is not as action-packed and not even as much tension later on in the game. Halfway through the story, you just figure out you can sit in a drone most of the time and let them hack, and you can just use them to kill, and you don't risk anything at all anymore. And when a drone is destroyed, you can just wait 30 seconds, and after that, it is respawned. Another problem is the driving, and this is also a core element, and it feels off, and therefore ruins a lot of the experience. And it has two aspects of it. It has to do with the mechanics of the car itself. For example, it cannot flip, but it also has to do a lot with the level design. The map is quite big. However, there are not many landmarks that you can use to orientate yourself. I often felt lost and just drove randomly without knowing the map. Halfway through the game, I didn't even drive anymore because I could just use fast travel points. And since it's faster, it was better because it was also not as boring as driving. Even when you have stars behind you by and being followed by the police, even on hard difficulty, it is hard to get more than 3 out of 5 stars, even when you try. And when you go around the corner and out of sight, the stars are gone within a minute, and it's not really that much stressing you. Driving backwards also is quite difficult since while you drive backwards, the camera rotates back to the front and therefore you cannot really see where you're going. With the driving problem also comes another problem, and this is navigation. As stated before, the level is not quite memorable. And besides that, the main mission icon is not displayed in the world, only in the minimap. And here it has a very exact location. However, when you come near that location, the icon and the location actually changes to the actual location then. So what you were going for was not actually the exact location, but an area without saying it is an area. It would be way better if they actually drew a large circle to where you have to go to in which area and then give the final destination. This creates just a lot of confusion right now, and it's also caused me unnecessary traveling. Right now, I need to have to constantly have the map open, orientate myself, and select to know where, and I need to select it to know the direction where I have to go to, and it often breaks the immersion of every mission. Hacking while driving also does not work properly, like since if you want to hack while you drive, you have to control 4 or 5 buttons at the same time. You have steering, the gas pedal, you have the quick hack or the hack and a speciality. You have camera control to look behind you, since most of the times what you do as we done behind you do its immediate effect, or you have to move the camera all the time since you're moving forward and the window to interact is quite small. Shooting is another core mechanic that is, although it feels good, the weapons are not interchangeable and you cannot pick up weapons or buy them except through upgrades, which are all non-lethal, which I feel they are still a bit lacking. Now I want to very shortly tap on the go over the UI. In some cases, the UI is actually pretty nice. You have a whole button to interact, and when you don't aim, there's a circle, and when you aim, there's a dot. It's very good feedback. However, there are also tutorial pop-ups, which are pretty immersive breaking, as everything is explained through text. In order to open doors, you also have to press 2 buttons for them to open instead of one, unless you enable a feature called the quick hack, which you have to do through the main menu. So what about the cutscenes? Well, although the cutscenes in themselves are not that bad actually, besides the fact, the characters know your character without ever having interacted with them, the main problem is the transitions. Because when you transition from a cutscene to gameplay or otherwise, it's done through fade outs, which makes it very clear that there are two separate parts of the game and therefore it's not one coherent piece, which is a big shame. I do want to mention the one last thing in my review. It's my favorite feature besides the obvious plays everyone and permadeath. And this is the stealth takedown of the robot. This just feels very polished and therefore also very satisfactory. Now, I have more small notes that I noted down, but I can't go over every one of them. But feel free to pause the video and look at them yourself. Here I have some more as well, but I won't go in onto them in detail. So, what would I patch if I were to work on Watch Dogs Legion? I am a student game designer, and Ubisoft is one of the companies I want to work for, possibly. So what would I want to patch? Well, the first thing I would want to patch is the difficulty of the enemy AI. First of all, I would make the chase time longer. Secondly, I would make it also sure that the gaps between moving between stars are smaller, therefore making it easier to get to 5 stars. This creates more engaging gameplay and more changing gameplay as well. If there's still more time, I would also patch to make sure that when you pick up a tech point object, it is deleted and not still lingers around as it is currently doing, and you just can't interact with it anymore. If there's one thing I would remove from the game, it is the opening of the house doors with the black fort behind them. I would just have them walk around instead of going inside, um, so that it does not break the immersion that I cannot enter a house. This will of course be difficult since it's linked to the sleep schedule of characters, and therefore it also that part has to be changed. If I could add one feature to Watch Legion, it would be a search recruit function. Currently, the player has to look very hard to recruit someone that he wants. I would instead give Bakely, the companion AI, a function that can search for a type of recruit. You can search globally for a woman, for example, or more specifically for a female beekeeper with resistance to bullets and a fighting background. The more specific the character you're looking for, the more difficult mission there will be in order to get that person to recruit. And maybe you even have to do multiple missions. This also means that you don't have to do missions for anyone that you want to recruit that is really unspecified. That if it is like you, it makes recruiting way more easy and meaningful. If I could add one extra other feature besides that, it would have to be a larger variety of recruitment missions. I would not have them just only save people or kill people. I would also have pay someone money to recruit them, or buy certain clothes, or beat someone up, or win at darting. More variety that allows players to fulfill their player fantasy more and spend more time trying to find someone who they might have some similarities with that they want. So, what improvements should there be for for the next Watch Dogs Legion or next Watch Dogs? In my opinion, I do not think they should remove the feature of play as anyone, but rather improve upon it. I would like to see more data points for the NPCs, such as weight, which decides fitness and therefore also stamina, hacking skills, flaws. Let every character have a downside that enforces the image that no one is perfect. Let them have parkour skills, stealth, driving skills, shooting skills, which decides aim accuracy. Let them have a clothing style, meaning that the character can only wear certain clothing, and other NPCs can comment on that and on their clothing style as well. I would also lock characters during specific hours. For example, if you have a medic who works night shifts, then you can't play as them during that time as they have to work. Instead, you have to use another medic or play as someone else, making it seem that NPCs still have a life and personality outside of the player, making the player more think about characters as people with their own lives and making you strategize and pick players that you can use during certain times. I would also make it so that not every character can hack or at least has to be unplayable for a certain amount of time to learn such a skill. The same goes for shooting and increasing stamina. It's also important that not everybody is attractive to recruit, and you do not want to recruit everyone. Instead, you look for people with certain skills that you need and that are more unique. This creates a focus for the player and not just pick up random people. Make them irreplaceable. This allows for people to play longer with them and learn their actual names instead of just referring to them to their occupation. Another important thing I would add is having multiple operatives active at the same time, and you can switch between them at any time, borrowing from Ghost Recon's Wildlands, Teammate AI, GTA 5, and Assassin's Creed Unity's co-op. This allows for multiplayer missions to be played solo and vice versa as well. Now, I know that currently the multiplayer is out, but like I said, I haven't checked it yet. And when I made this presentation, it wasn't there yet, so I'm not quite sure about this part. But it also allows you to decide how much risk you're willing to take. You can, for example, set up a driver for an escape route while you're going in stealthy, or you can just go in with with three people, guns blazing. It adds to the feel of having a strength in numbers. I would also improve the associates data points, not by making it random, but based on complex behavior types or compatible behavior types, like alpha or beta, like in Deus Ex Human Revolution is the case. So when they meet other people and other NPCs, they meet in their job or on their way to their job or in their schedule, they are compatible with. I would also look into the possibility of having a possibility chance of how the character would act instead of having pure knowledge what you currently have. Meaning that the player sees a prediction that an NPC has like an 80% chance of going to protest, but never know 100% certain. And it can be changed or increased or lowered by the actions the player or other circumstances happen. I would also look at different playstyles, which what different playstyles can be introduced. Having short range combat, long range combat, mid range combat, stealth kills, traps, accidents, and hacking. This, of course, is all limited by, you have to take into account the development time, the budget, the target audience, and the level design as well. For in the world, I would make sure that behind every door is an actual area that you can enter. Meaning that maybe not all houses can open their doors, but the ones that do have actually content in there that makes it feel complete. Having stores that you can actually enter, have multiple bars or perhaps even office and recreational spaces that you can go to. And also that would also like force the world to be way more smaller and make it more meaningful as well. When an NPC is created, it also should not just create the basics, but let them have a schedule upon creation, which of course can be unloaded when leaving the area, like in Assassin's Creed Origins. So they do not linger around in one space all the time when you don't interact with them, which is currently the case. This way, observing someone should already be interesting. It's the enjoyment of watching people, not just interacting. Another thing I would implement is that dying during a mission has consequences for the mission itself as well. This, of course, is more tricky to do so, but with the mechanic of playing as anyone is also more interesting. I would also make sure that anything that is used against you, such as weapons, can be picked up and used for yourself as well. Navigational wise, I would make the line that you follow red or orange in the corners if they are very sharp. I would also make it more clear if you're heading towards an area or towards a specific point so you know what you're in for, because currently that feedback is not good as I addressed earlier. Well, thank you all for listening. This was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you next time.